Belting is a thing we do in musical theater and all manner of other styles. And it's a sound that is connected to all kinds of natural human exclamations we make without even thinking about it. From the time you were a baby, you've been belting. Okay, so before I jump into all these sounds, I will put a definition frame around what I understand belting to be. It is a mode 1 chest coordination of your vocal folds that happens at a relatively high frequency, a pitch where your vocal folds would naturally stretch and release into a mode 2 head voice coordination. Your laryngeal position is relatively high, and the phonatory pattern of your vocal folds has a high closed quotient, meaning your folds are spending a little more time together than apart. Some people call this a more compressed vibratory pattern. I have another video that describes belting and the two main ways you can do it, where you can get all of this in depth, and I'll pin that at the top of the comments. So, mode 1 chest, sung at a higher pitch where your folds would naturally stretch and release into mode 2 or head voice. Your laryngeal position is on the higher side, and your folds are experiencing a robust phonatory event. They're touching more than they're apart. And again, we call that a high closed quotient. And hey there, if you are new here, my name's Dan Calloway. I teach musical theater, voice, and vocal pedagogy at Boston Conservatory at Berkeley. More than 25 years kicking around on equity stages, and more than 15 years helping singers get to work on Broadway, national tours, regionally, and around the world. And I'm very glad you're here with me today. So when I said you were belting when you were a baby, you immediately knew what I was talking about. Your body knew how to scream and wail the moment you got on the outside. I know both of our boys did. Nugget number 1 sounded like a little pterodactyl, and nugget number 2, the moment he realized he was external to the uterus, was not having it. Immediately, he was not happy. In fact, through your early years, you knew how to be loud so you could get your needs met. If you were hungry, thirsty, uncomfortable, scared, your body knew to cry out for your big caretaker to come and help you. And if you just imagine you're a 2-year-old sitting in your high chair, your parent brings a plate of broken up bananas and blueberries. But this was the day you decided you wanted to peel the banana for yourself. You'd seen them peel it many times, and today was going to be your day. But no, your plans were thwarted, your goals smashed, your independent banana access dreams cast aside in the garbage with the strawberry caps. The indignation begins to pressurize inside you like magma, and by the time the unconsulted Elmo plate hits your tray, you take a long sniff through your nose, and you go, "Ah!" At least that's how I would handle the situation. I can remember being the ring bearer in my aunt's wedding when I was 5 or 6, and at that rehearsal lunch, everyone was being served salad. I'd never seen these strange configurations of radishes and cauliflower before. It was the 80s. And all of a sudden, I felt super hurt that no one had consulted me. What was happening? When they put a salad in front of me, I burst into deep sobs. Thankfully, I was surrounded by empathetic bridesmaids, and I believe they rustled up a cheese sandwich for me out of the kitchen. I can remember the bread on that sandwich was soggy, but I still felt very VIP. I tell you this to say that these sounds are linked to survival. They're primal, and that's the one reason we're so interested in hearing them. The life or death sounds of our voice call out to deep knowings in our own guts, and we sense a chance to connect or feel some cathartic relief. Think of the sounds we make when we're enraged, grieving, or fighting to protect someone. But before I go super deep, there are also belty sounds we make that aren't so serious. Think calling out, "Surprise!" at your friend's birthday party, or if you need to get someone's attention who's kind of far away, "Hey! Hey!" That's an example. Or cheering at a game, say if there's a great play, especially if it's right after a bad official call. So, "Yeah! Yeah!" Lots of reasons to make these sounds, and you'll notice they all recruit a certain amount of breath pressure, phonatory engagement, and they come through particular tract shapes. Then, depending on the situation, you'll have varying pitches happening, so different amounts of stretch in the vocal folds. So your surprise at the birthday party will probably be higher than your yeah at the game. You may also notice that these living your life sounds don't bring in the same kinds of tensions that we do engage when we tell ourselves we're singing, like in the chewing muscles, in the extrinsic laryngeal muscles, and in your pharynx. Back there in the tube. Yeah. So you'll even notice these sounds having differing amounts of density. The 2-year-old angry about the banana will have a different density than calling a friend who's several yards down the beach. Like, hey, hey! Different densities of sound. So this brings us to our first mechanic to consider if you're struggling with how to belt or experiencing strain when you work on it. And that's to ask yourself about your breath pressure. Specifically, how much air do you need and how much support do you need for the vocal task at hand? And if you're struggling with strain when you belt, I'm going to tell you the answer to that question is you're probably doing too much of both. You're probably taking in more air than you need, and you're probably engaging more muscle than you need on the outflow. Here's why this is. Remember what I said about the definition of belting before. Mode 1, chest, sung at a pitch where your folds would naturally stretch and release into mode 2. So that's like here. Even hey, my folds want to go into mode 2 there. Hey, so hey, that's into belty town because I'm maintaining chest into a higher pitch. Your laryngeal position is on the higher side. Hey, and your folds are experiencing a robust phonatory event. They're touching more than they're apart. Again, we call that a high closed quotient. So what does that mean when you're sending air up from your lungs? It means you have a closed valve in your larynx, your vocal folds together, or glottis, that means closed folds, a valve that is robustly resisting the movement of air out of your body. So this sound, A, represents a lot more muscular resistance to airflow than this sound. Woo! So I can hit that. Woo! With a lot of breath support. And if I belt the A vowel with the same amount of support, so if I go woo, and then I use that kind of support, A, it can feel quite pressurized. Many times when we hear a belty sound, we think, oh, more air, more muscle. Not so. If I sing, that can use a lot more air than if I sing, why is that? The resistance of my folds is less in mode 2 head voice flow phonation. It has more of a 50-50 closed quotient than the belted vowel, which has a more air resistant vibration. I hate this terminology, but it is true. The belting is holding back more air. It's the same principle as letting air out of a balloon. So if you were squeezing the end of a balloon, the different ways that you would hold the end of that balloon would determine how quickly or slowly the air is moving out of the balloon. So your breath pressure, you can now experiment with this. Ask yourself, how much breath do I need? You want your inhale to feel satisfying, but you don't want to overfill. You don't want to feel overstretched and pressurized. Just a comfortably full breath that suits the phrase you're going to sing. And then, how much support do I need? And you want to aim to use all the breath you took in for that particular phrase. Then you ask yourself the same thing for the next phrase. And you can take it into the laboratory and just see what feels good. For actual mechanics of your breath and different ways of support, just go into my channel videos and look for the one called How to Make Breath Your Greatest Singing Supporter. It breaks down breath mechanics and why you'll use different support strategies for different tasks. All right, you're thinking about your breath intake and the amount of support you need. Now, let's take a look at how your vocal folds are interacting with that. Breath support and phonation can be a tricky chicken or egg scenario because sometimes you're not sure if you're over-supporting, therefore causing your folds to have to compensate with tensions to manage the breath pressure, or if you're over-muscling in the laryngeal region to begin with, and that's sending tension dominoes down into your muscles of support. Sometimes when I'm in the studio, it's hard for me to tell where the first cause is, so we play with different ways to free both the breath mechanism and the phonatory engagements. And usually that way we'll start to untangle the technical knots, and you can do the same. Most of the time, if you're asking, is it breath or is it phonation, the answer is yes. They're so interconnected, they immediately affect the other. What do you need to do to ensure that your folds are operating with the greatest level of efficiency when you belt? It's always a good idea to return to some of your sounds from life, the ones that show you can make sounds without strain, and then start to translate them over into prescribed pitches. So you'd go back to surprise or yeah, things like that. And if you want to play around with some more charged emotions and your body feels like it's a good idea, and always check in with yourself, you can go for that. So emotions of anger and protection work very well. So I'll do some anger and protection. Get ready. All right. So stop, back off. So that's a very shouted, belty sound, very pressurized inside. I'm angry, I'm protecting someone. Or if I'm trying to really protect someone, someone's about to, I don't know, walk into a street or something. I'm like, look out! That's really intense. I want to protect somebody. So you feel that's intense pressure from the torso and very engaged phonation on that. All right. So you can play around with anger, with just see you know your own emotional environment. So see what's fun to play with. It should stay fun. Sometimes we tap into the more intense emotions, and that can trigger some things for us that might not be so helpful when we're singing. So just be careful in that place. But as singing storytellers, we're often embodying these really intense emotions, and that's an act of love to live through those experiences for people. So that's often why we have belting as well. So all of those are belting, and you can notice what the body mechanics are when you do them, and all of those events are totally repeatable. Then you can take those impulses and begin to extend them out as you would in singing. So let's take a fun one. We'll take the surprise, and we can be simple and add a very basic melody. So if I went, so listen to how we exclaim it. Where does the pitch want to go? Surprise! All right, so the pitch goes a little higher on the prize syllable. So I just took a 2, 3, 1. Okay, is a good place to start. So I could go. Surprise, surprise, and you can do that on a scale. Surprise, surprise, and then you can just surprise, surprise, surprise. I'm thinking of that. Anyway, do you see that? It was all over Instagram for a long time. Surprise, surprise. All right, anyway, I didn't catch that until just now, but you can sing that as well, yeah. Surprise! Anyway, there you go. So you just kind of take the pitch of the exclamation and make something that, you could do. Surprise! Minor third. Make it kind of spooky. So that wasn't belting, but you can do that on a scale, or you can slide it, like I said, and just get used to that called out easy feeling and notice what that's like. Surprise! So if I go, and I'm just like, surprise, surprise! Surprise! And I can just extend that out, okay? So that's how you link the exclamation into a feeling of singing, all right? You're trusting your folds to do the vibratory work they do when you're just calling out sounds in life. A baby's not like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable in my tummy. I am now going to approximate my folds, inhale rather deeply, and apply support beneath my closed glottis in order to project my voice out of this crib. So no, that's not what a baby's doing. The cry is primal, and it happens before we even start to perceive language. Our body is wired to communicate through sound before we've put any of these conscious pieces together. But noticing how the body coordinates these sounds is super useful, so we can reverse engineer these mechanisms and understand how they're working. Often what's happening, our brain is aware we're singing, so we recruit all kinds of extrinsic laryngeal muscles to help us with the task, and that causes our phonatory work to be way too labored. And then it actually blocks the freedom of your expression. You're working harder for less result of sound and impact, and that feels really counterintuitive. When you really feel the ease of it, it's pretty shocking, especially if you're a hard worker and you've been working really hard at it. Sometimes it makes you a little mad when you feel how easy it can feel. So play around with the impulse and feeling of surprise, or hey, over there, or I'm right here, things like that. So see where those pitches want to go, and then you can call that out and then extend it over a simple melody. So you can hey over here, silly stuff like that, and just ask yourself how free and efficient that feels, and then how repeatable. So could I use less breath, right? Hey, I used about 40% less support, and it still felt quite easy and belty. Hey over here, and then if you're getting higher, hey. So you can experiment with how much air you use less. See what happens when I used even less. It sort of went into a different phonatory pattern. So there's a certain amount of air pressure that coordinates with that more closed phase. You want to witness your vocal folds doing their magic thing and notice how intuitively and involuntarily miraculous they really are. Singing is so much about witnessing what the body already knows how to do, and it's really nuts. Then you can collaborate with your body rather than suffering through the experience of muscling everything into submission for a very frustrating outcome. So you've looked at breath energy and vocal fold activity, and you've started to be curious about the chicken or the egg of it all. So now you can also take a look at the nuances of how your vocal tract is affecting things. So for an in-depth look at shaping for the belt, look at the belting video pinned at the top of the comments, where I talk about the differences in open and closed belt. That's what I call them. You have to understand why they're called that. I have a colleague who's a terrific teacher in New York, Jared Trudeau at Broadway Vox, who literally calls them opposite things. But once you understand what we're talking about calling open versus closed, it makes sense. So voice teachers don't have agreed upon vocabularies, so that's why it can be super confusing when you listen to different teachers who may be saying the same thing with different language, or different things with the same language. Oof. So that's why a basic understanding of vocal physiology serves you well, and then you can do some interpreting. But a quick review of this. You've got two kinds of basic belts. Open belt, in which the vocal tract is more of an open tube. Hey! Oh! Hey! Oh! This is heard in a lot of old school Broadway belting. Hey! It has an open, shouty quality, and there's a definite ceiling you can feel on the pitch. So Patti LuPone is a terrific example of this kind of singing. If you listen to her recording of Gypsy, it's very clear. So everything's coming up roses. That's I don't know. That would be belting. Yeah, that's belting what she's doing. It's with the vibrato, it can lean into more of a flow phonation. So there's some overlap there, but there's that open belt. Even if you go back and listen to the original cast recording of her singing Evita, lots of open belting there. If you're familiar with complete vocal techniques terms in Denmark, this kind of belting would come under the umbrella of what they call overdrive, though not all overdrive is belting. The other way we belt I call closed belting, because we are narrowing portions of the vocal tract. This gives the sound a sharper quality that boosts high overtones. There's especially narrowing in between the back of the tongue into the pharynx. So listen to the difference. If I go open, A, closed, A, 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 A. So this acoustic coordination allows us to belt higher pitches. So some of the more contemporary musical theater you hear uses this resonance strategy. Of course, top of mind for me is always Wicked. So something like, and I'll stand there with the wizard that's got a narrower closed belt feeling. Or I'll shout out my conservatory student who just graduated, Bryson Battle. If you listen to anything that he's saying on the last season or this current season of The Voice, you can hear him access this higher closed belt coordination. He has this amazing, wonderful high belt extension. So both sides of belting use what we call a divergent shape in the tract. So that's an outwardly facing megaphone idea that promotes bright color and high overtones. With the more open tube and open belting, there'll be more low frequency and shout, hey! And with the more closed coordination and closed belting, hey! There'll be even more acoustic boost and the ability to belt into higher pitches. So like, you hear the open, we'll probably top out. You really can't bring it above, for me, this C5, I think. Hey! Yeah, even I don't even know if that's a belt, but hey! Yeah, but then if I go, hey! Yeah, so anyway, I don't know if anyone wants to hear that, but it's possible to do. And again, you can check out my video about 2 ways to belt for more on this. And the video about what your tongue's doing when you sing also sheds light on the acoustic environment you're creating when you belt. Your acoustic shape actually sets up an amazing energetic barrier that bounces vibrational energy back to the vocal folds and gives you a terrific boost of efficiency. When you learn to dance with this bounce back feeling, you gain tremendous efficiency in your singing, whatever your phonatory pattern is. Then you won't feel like you're pushing sound through a stubborn membrane. You'll actually be celebrating all of the reflection, refraction, and diffraction, physics terms, happening in your tract and effortlessly leaving your mouth as a result. You're cooperating with physics, basically. Related to tract shaping and a big culprit in experiencing strain when you belt is trying to maintain the same muscular engagement on higher pitches as you do on lower pitches. Attempting this is a recipe for labored, pressurized sounds and intonation struggles. So just understanding how your folds create higher pitches will illuminate this for you. If you pluck a guitar string and you want to make the pitch higher, what do? You stretch the string or loosen it. If the string is looser, the frequency will be lower, and if you stretch it, you get a higher pitch. Same with your vocal folds. They vibrate higher frequencies when they stretch longer. So imagine a rubber band now. If you stretch the band, what will happen to the width or thickness of the band? It will thin. The same is true of your vocal folds. But here's the tricky thing. Your folds are what we call an isometric tensor. That means they can engage without shortening. That's why we can sing pitches both in mode 2, so hey, and mode 1. Hey! When I sing in mode 1 chest, hey! The thyroarytenoid muscles engage, adding more thickness to the vibration, but at the same fundamental frequency. So mode 1, hey! Mode 2, hey! And that's what happens when we try to maintain the same muscular engagement on A4 as we do on E4. So if I'm trying to do hey, and then if I try to produce that feeling of thickness on the A, it's going to feel like this. Hey! So you can feel the strain on that. If I let it thin, if I say, oh, you want to thin, I'm going to let you. Hey! Hey! So I've let a few things happen there. I've let my larynx float up, I've let it tilt and rock, and I've let the folds thin. We have to be aware that the rubber band wants to stretch, and we need to cooperate with this reality. Your folds will thin, and you need to let them. Otherwise, you'll be pummeling yourself with muscular resistance and tons of pressurized shout. That's no fun, and it's not sustainable. Again, this is a matter of witnessing your body, asking what its natural function is, and supporting that. Back to the baby in the crib, those folds thin naturally. If you think about a baby screaming, naturally thinning folds. It's also super important to remember your larynx is affected by the breath pressure coming from your lungs. So let your larynx float like a buoy and cooperate with your breath pressure. Let them work together. Your larynx also naturally raises when you belt, so let that happen. So I tell my larynx he has permission to fly to my brain if he wants to. He doesn't, but he knows he can. So any way you can give your body permission to do its thing, the better. Remember, belting by definition has a relatively high laryngeal neighborhood. So the difference between, so if I did that again, Hey! If I keep my larynx low, hey, hey, that loses the quality of belt, and that's more of like a, even really like a stable laryngeal Western classical shape. Even keeping the larynx kind of low. I actually let my larynx float when I sing classical music as well. I just find the acoustic environment easier to craft that way. So then after you've checked in with your muscular engagement right in the glottis, there are all manner of places where your vocal tract might want to contribute to its idea of what belting is. So you may notice a lot of engagement in the root of your tongue. You may notice some grab in your chewing muscles. You may note that you want to protrude the jaw. All of these you can work with gentle massage and help them to become more supple as sound comes through. If you're feeling a strained, whispery feeling when you want to belt, this is almost always due to pharyngeal constriction. That is your swallowing muscles closing in because they think they're helping you move sound forward. But in fact, they're diminishing your resonant space, making the tissue cells tight and less receptive to vibration themselves, and inhibiting the natural function of your folds. This is very important to remember. You never want to hear audible air escape in a belt production. This is an unsustainable coordination that could lead to vocal pathology or injury if you keep doing it. It's like you're pressing the accelerator with your torso with your air and then pressing hard on the brakes with your constrictors, and that's not good. You can feel it's not something you'd want to do over and over. So again, no audible air in a belt production. So pharyngeal constriction is a big culprit in inefficiency, and there are a couple of ways I like to address it. I got both of these following ideas from Dr. Dan in Australia, Dr. Dan's Voice Essentials. He is terrific and devoted to good voice science. If you're not already following him, really good information. So tool number one is to hold your hand in front of your mouth and sing into it. So it acts kind of like a reflective surface that bounces back beneficial sound waves into the tract. Hey, hey, hey. And so once you get used to this feeling, you can also start to shape your tract in a way that produces these same benefits. But your pharynx starts to learn from this that it can soften. The other way is to locate the top of your spine, here between your ears, feel your skull tilting there on its axis, and then look up to the stars like a coyote. And you'll let your jaw fall back, and now try to swallow. It's harder to do this because the position makes it harder for your constrictors to constrict. So in this neighborhood, you can move sounds through. So I'll let my head tilt up. There's the axis. It's very important to see that that's the axis. Your skull is sitting on top of the spine here. And then, hey, hey! And notice how that feels when your constrictors are unable to squeeze like they may want to. Another culprit along the tract may be your lips. So notice if there's any grip there, like, hey! And if there is, give your upper lip a little massage and then sing the phrases while jiggling it. Hey! And see what happens. Your lips can be a really tricky first domino that sends a lot of tension backward into the tract and the extrinsic laryngeal muscles. So check that. Always see if the mouth and the lips are wanting to engage. It's tough because you're moving all of this emotional energy through your body, and so things want to sort of like manage it as it comes through because it can feel kind of scary and out of control. So give those 5 things a look if you're experiencing strain with your belting: your breath use, the actual muscular engagement of your folds, your tract shape, cooperating with the function of your folds, letting them thin while the larynx floats higher when you sing higher pitches, and looking out for tensions and static engagements along the tract. The way your breath and tract shape affect your laryngeal function, I cannot emphasize enough how crucial it is to understand and use that when you sing. So I have a series of exercises that help you to get intimately acquainted with how your breath and tract affect your vocal function. You can grab that in the top of the description. That'll also make you a member of the Cala Crew, and you'll get weekly emails from me sharing with you all that I'm learning. You'll also hear about the online resource library that I'm launching this week, so look out for that. I'm excited to share that with you. And while these tools will help you resolve inefficiency and overwork in your belt, it's super important to understand where belting lives in the entire continuum of your voice. So this video all about understanding what folks are talking about when they say mix will demystify all of that for you. So hop over there and learn about the countless potentials in the sounds you can make in both head and chest voice. And most of all, remember, there is only one you, and somebody would love to hear the story that only you can sing. Love much. Now go sing or belt. Hey! Ha!